All right, a few lessons ago, when I introduced the idea of Booleans, I quickly glossed over the use of things like the less than and greater than sign to compare two values. So in this lesson, I wanted to offer a more comprehensive overview of how those operators work. And they operate very similarly to the equality operator and the inequality operator in that they return a Boolean back to us, a true or a false, basically which reflects a assessment of the truthiness or validity of whatever it is that we are testing. So for example, let's begin with less than. Less than is done with the less than symbol right here. You can get that symbol on your keyboard by pressing Shift along with the key that has the comma to get that less than sign, just like it is in common mathematics. So if I want to compare with 1 is less than 8, that is true. I'm going to get a true output right there. Similarly, is 10 less than 15? That is also true. You can see it output to the right. However, if I compare something like 12, is that less than 5? That is going to be a false because that is going to evaluate to not true or false. 12 is not less than 5, so I'm going to get a false there. In addition to less than, I have less than or equal to. The way we do that is simply with the less than sign followed by the equal sign. So if I want to compare if 1 is less than or equal to 5, here you can see that is going to evaluate to true. If I compare if 13 is less than or equal to 5, that's going to return false because 13 is not less than or equal to 5. And of course, the only difference between this and the previous less than operator is if we use a number and compare it to itself. For example, is 5 less than or equal to 5? We're going to get a true because of that sign. That's in comparison to something like this. If we do is 5 less than 5, the answer is going to be false because it is not less than 5, it is equal. So that's the differences that you're going to get between these two operators. You can see them here on the right. Equals is going to include that value. Less than is not going to include that value. Let's now take a look at greater than and greater than or equal to. Exact same thing. Greater than is the opposite symbol, this greater than symbol on your keyboard, which is Shift plus the button that has your period or your dot. So if I check if 10 is greater than 5, we can see that that is true. If I check with negative numbers, like is -1 greater than -5, that's also true. And of course, if I check something that is not true, like 12 greater than 20, I'm going to get a false. By the way, all of these operations work just fine on both fixed nums or integers as well as float numbers. So if I do something like is 12.83 less than 21.14, I'm going to get true. And the exact same thing is going to be true if I just repeat this entire thing, copy it, and do greater than. We're going to get false right there. So basically, floating point numbers are totally fine here as well. The operation works because both of them are numbers. Finally, let's conclude with greater than or equal to. Let's say I want to check if 8 is greater than or equal to 5. It is greater than, so that is going to return true. If I compare if 8 is greater than or equal to 10, that is going to evaluate to false because it is neither one of those, so I'm going to get a false result. Finally, if I compare the value to itself, is 8 greater than or equal to 8? Well, it's not greater than 8, but it is equal to 8, so this is going to result in a true. So all of these old school 4th grade mathematical concepts are hopefully starting to come back, but these are just the symbols that we use to test those kinds of mathematical conditions in Ruby. So by the end of this lesson, we've now covered a lot of different ways that we can arrive at Booleans. We have 4 different operations that we can do in this lesson: less than or equal to, greater than or equal to. In the previous lessons, we covered the equality operator, we covered the inequality operator, so we have 6 different ways that we can arrive at a Boolean, and that's not even counting things like the methods that you can call on different objects in Ruby. Remember, those Boolean methods are going to end in a question mark at the end of their method name, and that basically is Ruby's way of telling you that that method is going to return a Boolean. So there's many different ways that we can arrive at these Boolean objects, either true or false in Ruby, and later on in the course we'll see what the benefit is of these kinds of conditions. Many times we're going to want to check some kind of condition like this before we execute a bit of code. Right now, everything that we've been writing has simply been outputting text no matter what. But programming is all about logic. It's all about decision making. If something happens, take one route. If something else happens, do something different. And many times in order to check which route we're going to take, we're going to have to evaluate some condition, and Booleans are going to play a huge part in that. So I hope you're enjoying this section so far, and we'll continue on in the next lesson by looking at how some of the arithmetic methods work in Ruby. It might come as a little bit of a surprise, but it's a very cool concept. So I'll see you in the next lesson.